like a call with two presentations. We have the team from Pivotal and Microsoft will be presenting the MS SQL Broker. And then we have Stephen Levine from Pivotal, who's going to be presenting CF Dev. Very exciting. And then during the extensions rundown, we have Nikolai Valchev from SAP, who already presented the multi-apps, now called multi-apps. They had a weird name for it, but now it's really cool, multi-apps. He wants to kind of mention some details about it, since he just sent the proposal yesterday. So with that, let's get started with Swarna. I know she's on the phone. So maybe, Swarna, you can give us an update on CFF and kind of like where we're going, especially with the CF Summit coming soon.
Sure. Yeah, and I did join on my phone. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go for it.
Okay. So as we speak, and as Max is out there partying and holidaying, I'm here at the Think conference, IBM Think conference here. So it's ironic that I'm here at an IBM event and you're not, Max. From a foundation perspective, I think Summit is definitely the focus, the major focus for pretty much all of us here at the foundation. We have about 775 registrations so far, slightly trailing by the numbers that we can compare to the last year's registration, but it is definitely picking up, and we are kind of getting closer to being at the same trajectory as we were last year in terms of registration numbers. So that is good. The agenda is pretty much finalized with probably one or two last minute changes, but the final agenda, I think, should be closed and buttoned up, barring any other changes. We have several things at Summit. We have an unconference on Tuesday evening, the day before day 0, so day -1, I guess. So we have an unconference hosted by a few folks in the community. If you're interested in more information or even helping out, do reach out to either Dave Nielsen or Steve Greenberg. We have several events on day 0 as well. Numbers are picking up pretty well even for that. I think the user day and hackathon are receiving pretty good traction at the moment, at least as far as I can see from the numbers. We have a lot of folks registered for hackathon than we had at least anticipated. So that is a great affirmation that it's a great initiative. So Chris is pretty excited about it. We also have a Cloud Founder Day at KubeCon as a day 0 activity at KubeCon on May 1st. We closed the call for papers last week on Friday. We got, again, I think 3 or 4 times more submissions than we had expected. So that is also a great thing. We will probably consider doing a similar Cloud Founder Day at other KubeCons as well in Shanghai and in Seattle later this year. Information and even the final decisions have not been made for that one yet. We're still waiting for information from the CNCF and the broader LF team for those days. But Cloud Founder Day Copenhagen is definitely coming along pretty well. If you have any questions on any of these events, please do let me know. And regarding the proposals and the blog posts that are coming up, I think it's all the community work anyway, so there's nothing for me to report there on.
Excellent. Thank you, Swarna. I think there's one more thing, which is that people, if you're in this call or you contribute to Cloud Foundry, you get a pass to come to Summit. That's been usually the case, and I believe we have one again this year. I know Chip usually sends it out. Swarna, you might have done it this year. And of course, if anybody has not registered and you need the pass, ping Swarna, myself, or if you go back in I think the CAB chat Slack channel, you'll probably see it there. I don't remember exactly what it is, but there is a code that you can use.
Yeah, there is. Chip had sent it out to the mailing list and also posted it on Slack. But if any one of you needs it, just drop me a note. I will send out the code again. I will also
Excellent.
post it here in the Slack for the captcha.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. One more thing,
Yep.
did you mention about the hackathon that we have also going
Yes.
on? Okay, because that's an option when you register, but I guess the thing to tell people is that if you did not check the hackathon option and you still want to participate and you have a team and so on, just come the first day or plan to come the first day and take part of it, right? So definitely that's something that's going on as well.
Yeah,
I'm saying
and
this because
thank you for
I'm
reminding
helping run
about.
it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you for reminding about that. You can always go back to your registration and edit it, or you can even just walk in and sign up on the day of hackathons. We also added one other thing as part of the summit plan. So we built up an ISV day on day 0 for all of our distro members to bring their ecosystem partners, like the ISV partners, for a quick intro in the beginning. Like the day will open with a quick few presentations from the members, and then we will kind of open it up for one-on-one signups for engineers at the ISV partners to schedule some time with engineers from these different projects. We have listed all the information in the ISV day. So if you go back to your registration, you should be able to add it onto your registration as well. But if you're not sure how to do that, just drop me a note. I will get you all set up, either if you're interested in bringing your ISV partner, or if you would like to sign up for that and just schedule some time. I mean, if you are at an ISV partner and if you would like to sign up for a time slot with one of these engineers on these project teams. So drop me a note. I will again add this information as well into the meeting notes or in the CAP channel here. But yeah, do drop me a note if you're interested about that as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Swana. So no excuses, everybody. You have many ways to attend and to join. So we'll see you in Boston. Okay, so the next thing, unless there are any questions, is to kind of go very quickly over any highlights on the PMCs. So we usually start with the runtime PMC. I don't see Yui online, but I'm not at Pivotal this time, so I don't know if she maybe joined some other ways.
I believe Yui has a jury duty conflict, so she's not joining today.
Excellent. Eric can give us an update, I guess. Thank you,
Yeah,
Eric.
I can mention a few things. I know that the CAPI team has been doing a lot of exploration around how they'd like to better support zero downtime deploys natively in their API. And I think they just finished up a spike, and they're getting ready to incept on that. So that's very exciting. And the routing team has been doing a lot of work with their experiments around integrating Envoy and Istio as the next generation of the routing tier in Cloud Foundry. And I think they just hit a milestone around having a steel thread for HTTP traffic going through an Envoy and routing to application instances. So also great signs of progress there. And speaking of Envoy, container networking is about to start some work around using the envoys that can now run inside application instance containers to route traffic on the container network as well. So as the start of using those to apply various kinds of microservice policy patterns from app instances to each other, maybe to external services.
Sweet. Thank you, Eric. I know, speaking of the container, the routing team adopting Istio, we had some question about how the transition will happen and so on. And I think Shannon added some text on the proposal. I'd recommend people to take a look at it. I'm super excited about this. I think it's a great direction, but of course, you know, it's going to be a nice challenge. But this is good stuff. If you haven't spent some time looking at what Shannon is proposing, I would say now's the time to do it. Any questions anybody has for Eric or comments? No? All right. Thank you, Eric. I saw that Dimitri is here. Maybe he can give us an update on what's going on in Bosch. DK, you might be on mute.
Hey.
Hey.
We we don't really have anything new going on. The existing sets of tracks of work are pretty large, so they're continuing to happen. Probably the most interesting one is the hot swap, which is really rearranging a few different things inside the director. We recently shipped some new release that introduces team scoped configs. So a team can specify a cloud config or portions of cloud config that aren't going to get picked up by another teams. And we also shipped some stem cells. These stem cells include some hardening, as usual, to harden some of the permissions on the file system for jobs and packages and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
Cool. Thank you, DK. So one thing I'll mention is at CF Day for Index, we hosted a set of speakers, and one of the speakers was Danny from the Bosch team. He's the anchor, and he gave a really nice talk that gives strategies on how to use Bosch, especially if you have multiple teams, and some of the new features, I guess relatively new features that help make that easier. And to help out, Dimitri and I wrote a blog post on Danny's talk, and there's also reference to Danny's talk. The blog post is scheduled to be published, but what I'm going to do is I have a preview of it. So what I'll do is on the CAB Slack channel, I'll post it there, so that way people can take a look. Especially people that are interested in Bosch, I think you definitely want to look at some of the new features, or at least if you didn't spend time looking at those, you want to take a look at them. So I'll post it because it kind of gives a summary of them. Okay, I don't know if anybody has a question for DK or just generally about Bosch. Nope. All right, cool. All right, so now it's extensions. So for extensions, what I'll do is I'm going to give some time to the SAP team to discuss their multi-apps, because it's one of the new proposal that just came out. And then also you'll hear from Stephen Levine, who is submitting the CF Dev proposal. There's a few more things happening. As you know, we have a site where you can see the latest proposed projects, as well as the latest status. So I won't spend too much time discussing them. I would tell you just go there and then you can see the summary, just like every PMC also sort of have that, the runtime has something similar. So with that, let me see if Nikolai wants to give us kind of like a quick overview. He submitted his proposal, I think yesterday. He gave a talk on this in the CAP call, I think 2 CAP calls ago. So, after you hear him, if you want to see the CAP presentation that he did, you can go and fetch that out. So Nikolai, do you want to kind of give us an overview of your multi-app?
Yeah, sure. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So yeah, yesterday I made public our proposal from SAP for proposing this new higher level application lifecycle management capabilities that we right now are running at SAP. So we are currently a team of 9 people actually developing this service, which actually what it provides you a declarative model where you can describe a composite distributed higher level application containing several possibly app services and other technical artifacts. So we provide this higher level entity in CF to manage solutions, applications, or higher level services. So first of all, we provide the model, then we provide additional tooling for initial deployment updates, even book green updates, undeployments, etc. of such kind of apps. And we provide additional mechanisms how you can declare configuration variables, distinguish between different deployments of your app, etc. But all of this is in the proposal. So the important stuff is that we are already a good team here at SAP working on that for 3 years. Right now, there are more than 2,000 of apps on our cloud platform. Running such kind of apps. So we are developing it, operating it, etc. And right now would like to see whether the community sees it as something good to have standardized in the CF foundation, so to say. So as I said, the proposal is public. There are several videos you can check from the CapCo. I also gave a presentation on the CF Summit in Basel. You can check this more detailed session there. So yeah, I'll be happy to receive any feedback and move the project forward in the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nikolai. I think, for people, if you didn't get a chance to look at this, I would say, again, another thing to look at, which, has interesting consequences because it's solving a real problem. And I know that the CAPI team, Zach, responded on this, and, there's a lot to be done, but at least the SAP team is proposing something that's there, it's working. So I would say maybe it's worth, looking at it, giving some feedback, and let's see where it goes. Any questions? Somebody was going to say something? No? All right. So go to the CF Dev mailing list and you'll see it. All right. So for extensions, the only other thing, I guess a couple more things I want to mention is that, the CFCR, so the container runtime, used to be called Kubo. They're making a lot of progress. They're moving very, very fast. So if you go to the kind of drumbeat, you'll see some of the updates that George is putting and the team in UK. And then I also know that the auto scaling team has had a major milestone recently. So Jules and his team. So if you're interested in auto scaling, definitely take a look at this. I'm gonna try to see if I can convince them to maybe perhaps give a demo at one of those cap calls upcoming. So, pay attention to that. So one last thing I want to mention before we go to the two presentations, and we'll just finish with those, is that the cap call for April happens to be exactly during Summit. So what that means is we'll do it live. And if you remember when we did it live last time, it was a lot of fun. Dr. Nick was there, Jules was there, and I was there. It was a blast. So I would say if you're gonna come to Summit, make a point to attend this. I'll send the exact room. Swana is trying to get me a room, so that way you can be there with us and we can discuss it. We tend to be a lot more open, I think, than a call like this. And Nick is there too, so I would say make sure you attend this if you can. All right, so with that, unless there are any questions, we're gonna go to the two presentations. I think we'll have about 20 minutes for each. If you need to go over a little bit, that's fine, but 20 minutes, try to keep it at that. So first is the team. It's a combination between Pivotal and Microsoft. Zach will introduce, and then the team will present the MS SQL Broker. So Zach, maybe you can mention who's gonna talk. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Hey, folks. So we're, broadly in the Cloud Foundry community, we're getting more and more developers who are coming from the Microsoft ecosystem. By and large, the biggest thing they ask for is some sort of a SQL Server Service Broker or some other solution for a SQL Server database. And there's a broker that was out there that was submitted by some folks who used to be members of the foundation. But it hasn't had any commits in several years, two years, 2.5 years. So we wanted to have something that we could put out there that's actively maintained and that we could wholeheartedly recommend. And so Pivotal, some folks at Pivotal put together a new broker for SQL Server. And to be clear, this is for an on-premise Microsoft SQL Server that already exists somewhere in the enterprise. This is not a Bosch deploy of Microsoft SQL Server or anything like that. It's just a broker that will carve out databases, users, etc. So Mike Lloyd from our Pivotal's Microsoft Alliances team is here, and he's going to present it. One other thing that I should mention before we go is that we Pivotal built this broker, and we've been working closely with Microsoft, and Microsoft has agreed that they're going to be participate in the maintenance of it going forward, and eventually own it completely. So our goal is to get it into the incubator so that it can be out there, and this can maybe replace the broker that's out there to be the official sort of SQL Server broker endorsed by the community. All right. Well, all that said, take it away, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. Yeah, I mean, Zach touched on I'd say probably the biggest points. We'd like to provide a newer, more recent broker that's designed for full-blown SQL Server instances. Some of the things that we wanted to focus on were multi-tenant schemas and user creation, right? So multiple apps can use the same SQL Server instance with differing databases. We wanted to make sure that credentials could be shared with other applications, things like that. Some of the stuff that we wanted to stay away with were provisioning database engines, right? So the service broker doesn't provision.
Sorry, Mike. Do you want to share your screen or?
Yeah. All right. There we go. Can you guys see it? Awesome. Cool.
Thank you.
So originally it was by Jared Gordon. He and Malika, also at Pivotal, wrote the initial implementation, and then Microsoft has committed 3 maintainers, Ben, Zhangji, and Thomas, as maintainers moving forward. So the nice part about this is our focus has been on making sure this is an actively maintained project, because the previous project is no longer maintained. A lot of customers felt that SQL Server wasn't getting an appropriate kind of priority within the community. So we wanted to make sure that we focus very heavily on the fact that this is not only currently maintained, but it will be maintained in the future, and we have that commitment from Microsoft that they will maintain it in the long term. So some of the anti-goals that we have for this project are, we don't want to dynamically provision SQL Server instances, right? We can provision databases and users for those databases, but we don't want to be trying to manage SQL Server deployments. That's a little out of scope for this. We also don't want to make sure that we redeploy or heal existing deployments. If something goes bad, just leave it, create a new one. Maybe for version 2, but not for right now. The reason we want to submit this to the Cloud Foundry community as a whole is that this has been a collaboration between both Microsoft and Pivotal, and we felt that it would gain community trust by having it be open source and owned by the foundation. It adds a lot of legitimacy to the broker as a whole. The implementation was written in Spring Boot. Currently, it does not support Pivotal Cloud Foundry 2.0. However, Jared Gordon pushed a new branch this morning, which adds new features. Right now, there is a dependency on Redis. However, that will be going away in the next couple days, so it can be a fully independent service broker with no other dependencies.
Just to interject real quick, I think you meant Spring Boot 2.0. So now
yes.
the new
Spring
branch
Boot 2.0.
supports Spring Boot 2.0.
Yes, sorry, Spring Boot 2.0.
This is Mike.
Sir.
Can I ask a question? The removing of Redis, that comes from that simple service broker layer. Are you going to rewrite the whole broker, or?
That is a question for Jared, who unfortunately isn't on the call.
No. I asked because I've noticed that Redis thing across a range of those Spring Boot brokers, and I was just wondering.
My understanding is that it's a feature of Spring Boot 2.0 that doesn't require that, but I can't speak definitively about it, sorry.
Cool. Whenever you solve that, it's interesting to share that, because that was a...
Yeah, I can definitely pass that feedback along, and we'll publicize it. The workflow for the service broker is very standard. Create the service broker application, And then you can bind it to an application. You can unbind it. You can delete the service that you've created. Microsoft, as far as future work goes, Microsoft will very likely have their own roadmap for this. Pivotal incubated it with collaboration from Microsoft, but the plan for us at Pivotal is not to maintain this. It's for Microsoft and the greater community. The repository, or the Service Broker repository, does come with a client example that works. If you want to deploy it, you can go ahead and do it. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to deploy it ahead of time. I just didn't have enough time. Otherwise, it'd be a demo. But you can find the client example here, as well as instructions on how to test the broker for yourself.
I want to add something. There are some samples as well that leverage the broker in the Steel Toe project. So you may have heard of the Steel Toe open source project. It's basically the .NET SDK for Cloud Foundry and includes access to all of those Spring Cloud Services tools from .NET clients. There's a connector for it, effectively the same thing as a Spring Boot connector, but for a .NET app. That leverages this SQL Server Broker, and there are samples for that out in steeltoe.io as well.
One more thing is, I think Brett from cloud.gov was asking a question on the chat about whether or not credentials get regenerated.
My understanding is currently credentials are not generated for each bind, but that is a question for Jared that I can't answer, unfortunately.
Yep.
They're
Okay.
not. I thought that they are. So when you bind it to an app that you get new.
They very well might be, but I can't speak definitively on it.
Okay.
I guess it probably is to a service key, right? Like you get when you create a key, it will create a credential for you. Right?
That is my guess.
I believe so, Max. So every database, then you get your own user for that database, right? Your own user ID and password.
I see. Cool.
And then to add on top of that, we actually host the Service Broker on the Pivotal Ecosystem Network, as you can see here. So we have a couple customers that have given this a test run. They really love it. They've had some good feedback for us and stuff like that. So it's definitely been tested out in the wild, and we have a customer that is hoping to go into production with this at some point soon.
Yeah, I think Brett made another comment on the chat. You may want to take a look at it. He's giving you guys advice, so that's a good thing.
My greetings.
Go ahead, Mike. So are you going to give us a demo of it, or are you?
To answer Brett's question, I don't know about the new credentials. As far as migrating to new instances, that is once again, unfortunately, a question for Jared. I'm just filling in because he couldn't be here. I did want to give a demo. Unfortunately, I don't have a SQL Server instance stood up, and I couldn't get one stood up in time because I was traveling yesterday. Sorry.
Okay. I guess this is it, or do you have more that you're going to show us?
Nope, this is it. Unless Zach has further comments.
Just wondering if there are any other questions around the broker that we can answer.
Nope.
All right. Well, I'll take these 2 seconds to plug that we've got.
Sorry, we have this where I yell and all of a sudden nothing happens. From your understanding of the broker, you know, as you went through the create, the bind, etc., do you see any limitations on that features or functions or expectations of SQL Server users won't be supportable?
I'm not sure what you're asking with the question, Dr. Nick. Can you?
Okay, I'll ask it a different way. If I'm a knowledgeable SQL Server user and I come to Cloud Foundry and you know, I start to try to bring SQL Server into my life, is there going to be a feature or a behavior that I won't be able to ever achieve because of the restrictions around the Open Service Broker API sequence?
There's nothing that we know logically. Me as a at least former extensive SQL Server user, It behaves as I would expect and gives me what I think I need. But obviously, the ultimate test for that is to get a lot of people to use it, and hopefully a lot of people contributing to it.
Cool. So the user model of users being created, shared within a space. I guess we now have shared service instances, so that probably solves that problem if they need to share it. Cool. No, I was just wondering if any. I don't know the ways in which people have grown used to playing with SQL Server and big shared SQL Server cluster. I'm just interested to know.
So this broker does what you would expect to get from a DBA, right? If you say, hey, I would like a database, this gives you a database and it gives you a dedicated user for that database. However, there are limitations right now. Active Directory authentication. If you're doing any type of SQL clustering, it doesn't expose any of those features. The focus on this, at least at this point, was very much kind of an MVP of getting it in the hands of customers, getting it tested, and then as Microsoft takes over the long-term maintenance of this, they'll probably have a roadmap that could potentially include features like this.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. And I guess I think Zach mentioned this, but I'll stress it that I guess the team from Microsoft is also involved and will be pretty much maintaining this code. So feel free, they're the experts. So feel free to talk to them if you're interested in this. Okay.
Can I say one more thing before we
sure,
on the topic, Max? I just wanted to mention that at Summit, this is the first time we've got a cloud native .NET track, full track of talks dedicated to .NET programming. So if you're somebody who likes that world, come join us. We've got Scott Hunter. He is the head of .NET engineering at Microsoft. He's going to be headlining the event. There's also a one-day training class that will be provided by Pivotal plus Kevin Hoffman at the beginning of Cloud Foundry Summit. And then stay tuned for during the keynotes. We've got a couple different demos that will be leveraging .NET on Cloud Foundry in some different ways, including the Steel Toe project. So some very cool stuff in that space.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, getting the whole .NET world into Cloud Foundry is brilliant. So thank you for that, Zach. Okay, so I guess next we have another engineer from Pivotal. So Stephen Levine, you guys seen him before. He gave us an overview of his brilliant CF Local tool, and now he's back with even more. And I know Stephen had one of the best talk that we've had in the Cap Call. So here's a challenge to top himself. So let's see what you can do, Stephen. Go ahead. You got 30 minutes, man. 25, sorry. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And we can see you too. Yeah.
Great. So before I start, I want to introduce Scott Cecil, who's joining me as co-PM for CF Dev and PCF Dev and sort of this effort. So let me share my screen. All right. I think everybody can see that. Cool. First, I want to talk for a second about PCF Dev and sort of what that project was, if you're not familiar with it. So PCF Dev was is a local Cloud Foundry experience that worked on top of VirtualBox. It didn't have a community version. It was available through PivNet, which had a barrier to entry that was a little higher than we'd like. And didn't have Bosh, and that was a big limitation too. And so a little while ago, we decided that we wanted to sort of re-implement PCF Dev a little differently and also offer a community version of it that would be a foundation project. So that is CF Dev. So PCF Dev isn't going to go away. It's just going to be an extension on top of CF Dev that lets you deploy PCF. That sort of Pivotal will manage separately, won't be related to the Cloud Foundry project. We'll keep a lot of separation between the two. So CF Dev is a sort of very different experience from PCF Dev, although the user experience, if you're just using Cloud Foundry, is very similar. So CF Dev is another CF CLI plugin, but unlike PCF Dev, it works on native hypervisors, so you don't need VirtualBox to use it. It has a full BOSH director, and so you can deploy any BOSH release. Anything that will successfully deploy to BOSH Lite should deploy just as easily to CFDev. But CFDev, when you start it, comes with a full CF pre-deployed and starts in about the same amount of time. When I say native hypervisor, I mean like HyperKit on Mac using the native hypervisor framework, or Hyper-V on Windows, or KVM on Linux. So you don't need anything but stuff that the operating system is providing. And so we already have a release of CFDev out, the first alpha release. This is only for Mac right now. We're working on a Windows version that'll work on Hyper-V. But if you install this, you don't need VirtualBox or anything else besides Mac OS Sierra or greater. We do have a bug in this initial alpha release that makes it not work if you haven't ever had Docker for Mac installed, but you can have it uninstalled. It's very strange. So if you run into that, you might need to install Docker for Mac, but the next release won't have that limitation. It's just a configuration change. We didn't notice Docker for Mac was making. This alpha release of CFDev and the sort of the new implementation we're using uses a lot of similar technology that's to Docker for Mac. So it's using Linux Kit with VPN Kit to do all this fancy networking and stuff. So we get benefits like if you have a corporate proxy, you don't have to get the proxy envars in the everywhere in the VM. It just magically figures out how to route everything through your proxy. It's pretty fancy stuff. So the the next thing is we have this proposal we submitted to the CS, to confuse it to the unfortunately similarly named CFDev mailing list that sort of proposing incubation for CFDev. I encourage you to check it out. People have been asking a lot of good questions about what this is, what PCFDev was, what our motivations are, and things like that. I definitely encourage you to take a look and definitely reach out if you have questions. With that, I am going to deploy Spring Music, a classic app for the classic sample app for Cloud Foundry, to CFDev locally. It's going to be a very short demo. I want to leave a lot of time for questions, and we don't have services available yet. You can deploy them yourself, but they're not pre-deployed, so there's not all that much to demo besides the standard CF features that you're all pretty familiar with. So with that, you should be able to see this terminal here. So I didn't want you to wait for this thing to start, even though it's not too slow. It took a long time during the demo. So I can see I uninstalled PCFDev. I installed the CFDev plugin that I downloaded just from the GitHub site, and I ran CFDev start. And you can see we updated the ASCII art logo, although it looks like resizing the terminal made it look a little funny, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and log into the CFDev I just started this morning. And let's use user pass as the credentials. You can see got those right here. And then I have the Spring Music app that I already built a jar, so you wouldn't have to wait for that. And I'm just going to CF push it to CFDev. And this should take about a minute to push. You can see here it's running through the detection process. It's sort of found the Java build pack. It's your standard push experience. Everything in CFDev is what you'd expect from a Cloud Foundry installation. Java build pack's there. Currently, this is running CF deployment 1.0, I think, or 1.1. It's a little out of date. The next release should have you running the latest CF deployment. We'll just wait for this app to finish pushing really quickly. You can see I pushed it ahead of time just so it hit the cache and wouldn't take too long. Give it one minute.
Hey, Stephen. Someone asked a question in the chat, just so you know.
Cool. Let me figure out how to get to the chat from the screen share. Can you repeat the question? Or read the question?
I can read it. It's from Norm. He said, will we be able to, in the future, have PCFDev and CFDev both installed at the same time?
So we don't plan, or we haven't thought about that yet. We may, fix the namespacing issue or release with the. So the problem I think that's referring to is the name of the plugin. Once you install it, the command it installs is dev, which conflicts with the PCF dev one. So you can't have both installed at the same time currently. We didn't think that'd be a problem initially because the VMs are both relatively large, so you wouldn't want to have both started at the same time, and you can leave one running if you uninstall it. Uninstalling a plugin doesn't shut down the VM, so you can uninstall one plugin, install the other one, use that, whatever. That is not the best usability experience, and on Mac it is possible. On Windows it's not possible to run Hyper-V and VirtualBox at the same time anyways, so it's not an issue on Windows, but on Mac you can run VirtualBox and HyperKit, and so we may look into addressing that, but we don't think there are a lot of use cases for it, and it's already kind of possible, so we may not end up doing that, or we'll think about it. So you can see, so you can see this is, sorry, can someone mute? I think there's some background noise there. Okay, so you can see Spring Music approached successfully. I'm going to grab the sort of route it generated randomly, then go back to my web browser here, and ta-da! Spring Music running locally from this domain, which was pointed back at your machine at actually an alias interface on your loopback interface is how VPN Kit does the networking. I thought it was pretty interesting. So we don't have services yet, but I can show you Bosch, so where you can deploy your own services if you want to. So here I'm going to do cfdev Bosch, and you can see there's only one cfdev Bosch command available, which is this envar thing. So if you do cfdev Bosch env, you get this selection of environment variables. These are temporary generated secrets. I'm not exposing anything anybody can hack into here. And if I source that using eval, run that using eval, I guess, now my Bosch CLI has full access to the Bosch director running inside of CFdev. So if I do Bosch releases, you can see all my releases from CF deployment are there. And if I do Bosch deployments, you can see my CF installation is there and has all those releases deployed. It's using the Bosch Lite stem cell. The Bosch aspects of this are similar to Bosch Lite underneath. It's using the same director Bosch Lite does with the same CPI. So that's about it. Eventually, we'll be able to, you can currently Bosch deploy. We've tested RabbitMQ already, and that deploys really easily if you just change the Bosch Lite routes in the RabbitMQ repo, and you can deploy RabbitMQ service in there. Eventually, we'll have flags like the current CF CLI does that'll let you deploy services, but they'll probably be more dynamic. You'll probably be able to say CF dev deploy this or undeploy it on a running instance. Bosch sort of opens up a lot of possibilities for us here. And that's about it. That's all I got for my demo. Does anybody have questions?
There is one more question. I guess I'm turning into a moderator. From Mike, he said, do you foresee support for adding custom Bosch op files to the CF dev deploy?
Current custom Bosch ops files for deploying like other service, do we plan to offer ops files for deploying other services?
I think what he means is for Cloud Foundry, like maybe you have your own customizations to Cloud Foundry and you want to override them with Bosch ops files.
Download the manifest, apply your operating file, and redeploy it.
Yeah. So we plan to offer the manifest. You can already download the manifest in this Bosch directory using Bosch, and so you can download it, make changes to it, and redeploy if you want to, and that works completely fine. You can undeploy CF and deploy a new CF if you want to. That all works. We are planning an option to just give you the Bosch director with nothing else to make it kind of like a Bosch Lite experience on the native hypervisors that would let you deploy CF also. All those things are possibilities that we'll have an easy way to do at some point. when we do the service flags, we can offer more services than we offered in the past because we don't have to bake them in than we offered with PCF Dev. I mean, and so there'll be custom ops files and/or manifests for all of that that you'd be able to download and use to deploy a sort of wider selection of services than the 3 or 4 we have right now.
David, it's Nick. A question on the resource requirements. So 3 years ago, I bought a brand new Mac Air, and it still works really good, right up until I tried to use CF Dev. The CF Dev looks like it uses almost 10% of my 500 gig SSD drive, which 3 years ago was a pretty fancy drive, quite frankly. I know I quite like it. And when I went to try to deploy more things, my machine became very unhappy that I was trying to do all this stuff. So let's not make my machine the problem, but what is the sort of resource requirements that sort of should be?
Yeah, for this first alpha, you probably want a machine with 16 gigs of RAM or more, and quite a bit of free disk space. I haven't looked too much at how much disk space it's taking up in the latest release and the latest acceptance builds. We haven't applied many of the optimizations we made to PCF Dev to CF Dev quite yet. It's still in the backlog. We wanted to get the first release out with just something that worked and then cover that later. So we're hoping to get to a similar footprint. It's going to be a little bit bigger because you'll have a Bosch director there, you'll have Bosch agents running and stuff like that. But we're hoping that you'll still be able to run it in a machine with 8 gigs of RAM and push a few apps. That's the goal. The optimizations we haven't applied yet are things like there are some JVM options you can use to tune UAA to make it take up less memory. There's some things that we just haven't got around to yet that we know we can do.
A question on the boot up time. You said it was really fast. When I booted it up again on my classic Mac, even after downloading everything, it still took 40 minutes to bring it up. Is it doing a resurrection, or is there a reason why it takes so long? Is it something fixable, or?
So we see it take on a machine with 16 gigs of RAM. That's a relatively fast machine, an i7 or something. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes, which is about the same as PCF Dev. The first alpha release may vary a little bit more than subsequent releases for that time.
Is it doing a resurrection of something pre-deployed, or is it deploying it and
it's deploying from scratch. It's like if you deployed CF to Bosch Lite, but we made some changes to Bosch Lite that improved that experience, and they're mostly upstream by now actually. We've seen on the native hypervisors on Mac at least that process, if done with all the right bits locally and if it doesn't have to download anything during the process and stuff, doesn't take that much longer than the PCF Dev's process, where all the pre-deployed services would start at the same time. It's mostly just copying stuff around. That's the extra time on top.
Cool.
So following on the heels of the previous presentation with the MSS2L Service Broker, what's the timeline for getting this heap of awesomeness into the hands of the Windows world? Hyper-V is what I'm really asking.
Just to clarify, do you mean you want to do CF Dev start on a Windows machine with Hyper-V, or do you mean you want Windows cells, like pushing Windows apps, or?
No, Hyper-V. Yeah. So it's all, hey, look, I'm in the Windows world. I've got this awesome Surface Book, and it's got 16 gigs of RAM and a lot of disk. It's like a MacBook Pro, except that it's Windows.
Yeah, so relatively soon. That's coming up pretty quickly. We are fixing 1 or 2 bugs on Mac first right now. We need to make sure PCF deploys to it well, and then we're going to tackle Hyper-V. We would not call it, we wouldn't say it's finished until Hyper-V support works just as well as support on Mac. That's a critical part of our roadmap. It's definitely something that we'll get to soon. We started with Mac first.
Awesome. So Tuesday, right?
Probably not Tuesday, but soon. We are thinking about Windows cell support also. The ability to, if you're on a Windows machine or if you can run a Windows VM, deploy Windows apps, like .NET apps to it. That's something we're thinking about too. We definitely care a lot about our Windows users, especially because our PCFDev integration, we think will largely be used by Windows users because that's who, most of the user base for PCFDev right now is Windows.
So you have a couple of volunteers in the chat for testing.
Let me see if I can figure out where the chat window went. Somebody want to read them to me?
Is that participants little bubble thingy, and then when you click there, then there's a chat.
So Mike Lloyd and myself, and we've got one other that would be able to help test on Windows.
Yeah. There's also a question about networking to get access to the web UI associated with things like Prometheus. So I guess he needed some tips, so maybe something you can talk about. Go ahead.
I found the chat window. After working with CFDev a little, any tips on networking with getting access to web UIs associated with things like Prometheus? Can someone talk, Patrick, can you talk a little bit more about that question? What are you looking for networking?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually kind of stumbled onto CFDev and was working with it a little bit. So basically I was looking to do some application monitoring. So I did a deployment for Prometheus to do, just like I said, some app monitoring. But I had some issues. I ran into some networking problems trying to get access to the web UIs associated with it. And maybe I could talk to you after the call or something like that to maybe get some tips on that.
Yeah, sure. That sounds good. The networking in PCFDev, the networking in CFDev is kind of interesting. It's more interesting than it was in PCFDev with VPN Kit there. So I can definitely imagine that there'd be maybe some issues. There are some issues with Bosch networking in the alpha too that should be fixed in the next alpha release. I think there's a Bosch subnet that's not routing correctly in the alpha, so that may be what you're running into. But let's chat afterwards.
Perfect, thanks.
Next question I see is, no, I don't see anything else. Sorry, am I missing? We talked about custom ops files installed at the same time, and the rest looks like SQL stuff.
This is like Wayne said, a heap of awesomeness, I think he said. So this is really, really cool, Stephen. So of course, after reading your proposal, you're talking also about services, how you're gonna, I guess, support that. Maybe you can mention briefly what that is again, so that people can be even more excited, and maybe you can finish with a timeline of when to expect this and so on. I'm not trying to put pressure.
No, that's fine. You mean what services will make available that'll be easy to deploy, or that you won't have to touch Bosch to get them there?
Well, I mean, it depends, right? I think what you've done with local and this is to make it easy for me as a developer to just get started with Cloud Foundry without having to deploy Cloud Foundry and manage it. And you're making all that easy. But obviously, any developer needs to when you start using Cloud Foundry, you need services. So I expect that's part of the next step is how to connect my applications that I'm doing with services without having to deploy them, or would you expect me to deploy them and then use them?
Yeah, so going back to the screen share over here, what we suspect the experience will be like is when you do CFDev start by itself, it'll probably start with the SQL Broker at least. We want to keep the footprint pretty low, so we may not add a whole bunch of services by default. But then if you want extra services, you'll be able to do something like this. Like RabbitMQ and Redis or something. And if you do that, then we'll pre-deploy those services when CFDev starts. And you'll be able to do CF create service and bind the services to your app and anything like that. This is sort of like the current experience with PCFDev. In PCFDev, everything is baked into the VM. And so we always start services except for Spring Cloud services because they're already on your machine and they don't take up too much. In this, it'll probably be more like you get MySQL, and if you start with other ones, it'll download those piecemeal and install them if you request them.
I guess you're basically doing what the administrator of the broker would have to do to set up and so on, right? You're doing all of this in the background?
Yeah, it's just Bosch deploy underneath. Because we're using the standard, like CF RabbitMQ release, CF Redis release, those things. And you can deploy them right now. You don't need this. This is just a convenience function. You can go clone those repos and do, change the Bosch Lite routes to v3.pcfdev.io and do a Bosch deploy, and that should work. Or we've tested Rabbit at least, and we know that works. For the PCF integration for this, we'll also make Spring Cloud Services available. But that'll be part of the PCF extension.
One other question. Usually with brokers, you have to enable a broker for a particular org and I guess space. In CFDev, you give me a org and space, and if I create new org and space, then those would have to be added. Like you'd have to add them to, like the services would have to be enabled for those orgs and space.
So you can register a broker across all orgs and spaces. Like
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we do in the in PCF Dev right now.
You are a master of your small PCF world, of your small CF world. You do anything you like.
Yeah, you have we give admin credentials and user credentials when you start this up, and both are pre-prepared and work. You can see up here.
Built into it.
Yeah, so you can administrate your cluster, or you can pretend that you're just a regular user and use what's there already.
I see. So you are an admin when you spin up CFDev, I guess, when you start it.
Yeah, we offer an admin user and a regular user, and also you have full access to Bosch, so you can deploy whatever you want to. It's just like if you had Bosch Lite and everything were pre-deployed and worked perfectly, and it ran on your native hypervisors and all of that.
Very cool, very cool. One more question. I don't know if anybody asked, but in terms of like stem cell management, you also give me full-blown, I can upload different stem cells and start using those and testing with that as well.
So the stem cells are specific to different IaaS. So this just uses the Bosch Lite stem cell. If you try to install the AWS stem cell, obviously you wouldn't be able to use that.
No, of course.
Right, but you could. I am pretty sure you can, if you wanted to make a custom, Warden, whatever it's called, Warden Bosch Lite Ubuntu Trusty, whatever stem cell, you could. I suspect that will work as well. I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because a lot of CVs, end up pushing new stem cells. So if you wanted to test on like a new update, you could actually go to CFDev and test that too, right? Very quickly.
Yeah, totally. You have to have an updated stem cell for Warden, but yes, that would work if you had that.
Okay, let's see if there are any questions. We have 1 more minute. Okay, dude, I think we owe you a beer. I owe you a beer. I mean, it's been fantastic, the level of innovation that you're making developers way faster, their job better. So thank you for that. Unless there are any questions, maybe you want to close out?
Oh, no, thanks. I'm happy to give this demo, and I'm glad people are excited. I also want to mention again, if you have questions, you can feel free to reach out to me or Scott also. He's co-PMing this with me. He's far more product-focused than I am. So I'm really still an engineer. So don't hesitate to reach out to him too.
Very good. And you guys have a Slack channel? CFDev Slack channel?
I think we have a bunch of Slack channels. We have a CFDev Slack channel in the community Slack. I think there's also a PCFDev Slack channel there. There's So yeah, definitely reach out there too.
Okay, and then you'll be in Boston. So let's, if you want to meet him, the team, I guess, come see them. Okay, unless there are any questions, we are top of the hour. We're going to close. Remember, next month, it's going to be in Boston. And we're doing it live, so come, it will be fun. Okay, until then, talk to you next time. Cheers. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.